Welcome to the Newswire. Glad to be here with you with producer Alex. Before we get going talking about Trump's 100 days, there's still a few days left. If you're watching this and it is before May 7th, you can buy your tickets to the Impact Driven Leader Summit, May 7th and 8th, Spokane, Washington at the Davenport Grand. Would love to have you there with myself, Jenny Catrone, Robbie Emery, Katie Harnato. We're going to have an amazing event. And I can guarantee this, you will walk away having done work. It will be a very productive 2 days. We will have workshops. We will have sessions to get things done. Our unofficial theme is culture. And I keep reading more and more headlines where culture is under attack in organizations. We're going to work through that. We're going to go through that and see what it takes to have championship level sports teams, but also how you can have that same defined culture in your organization. Go to IDL Summit to learn more. And with that, we're going to jump into Alex with the first 100 days.
The first 100 days
First
of
100
the president.
days of the presidency, Donald Trump.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, whether you agree or disagree with the president, is that he has this sense of urgency that we haven't seen for even his going back to his first term. That didn't exist, I think, to the degree it does now. Because, all the new Fox has its polls, CNBC. Overall, his numbers are I would say they skew negative.
Yeah.
I was looking at
some of the things that you shared that we, went through is, his approval ratings were, lower than what they were when he took office.
Yeah.
Here's the way I spin that. You're not going to agree all the time. And, you and I've talked about this either on camera, off camera. You got to let it play out. And there's a difference between letting it play out and sitting on your hands, just expecting it to be different. And then there's letting it play out because the presidency, the administration has done things.
Yeah.
They have, I think the last record, don't quote me, you can pull this up. I think they have, as spicy and as I would say, kind of polarized as it is, they've accomplished more deportations in the first 100 days than I think Biden did it in the last year.
Yeah.
It's something crazy like that. And here's the thing. This is what I think people don't realize is they think, oh my goodness, Trump is just deporting everyone. He is on a clip. He's going to have to increase deportations to rise to the level of what Obama did during his presidency, his entire 8 years. Like he isn't even at that rate, which is crazy to think.
Yeah, the areas that I have the poll up now, and we can go. Overall job performance is about a 44%, which is I would say it's lower than his original when he came into office, around 49%, which is standard. Border security is very high at 55%. Immigration 47%, which is approve and disapprove is about the same. Deportations 45% to disapprove 49%. Guns 41% to 44%. Foreign policy 40% to 54% disapprove. The economy, this is kind of where his lowest marks are on the economy, taxes, tariffs, and inflation. Interesting. Those are all his lowest marks.
Here's what's very interesting about that. You and I live completely opposite ends of the country.
Yeah,
me in the Pacific
Florida,
Northwest, you in Florida. And one of the things that has gone on here, and I've shared with you, is I just read it this morning. Washington, the state, has imposed an 8% across everything budgetary increase, and we were already in a deficit. So they've increased their budget by 8%, and where they're going to, by virtue of that, increase taxes on several different factors that are again along that 8 to 9% increase in taxes. And Washington doesn't have an income tax, much like Florida, but we have sales tax, gas tax, property tax. Kind of, I would say,
you're
pleasurable. Whether it's being outdoors, concert tickets, sporting events, all of those things are getting taxed at a higher level to try to fill in some of the expenses. Here's what I wonder. Are you seeing that same increase in taxes in Florida, or is Washington different than Florida?
No, we haven't. I mean, for us personally, no, we haven't seen that increase in taxes.
Okay. So,
Not at
if
all.
you were to say, compared to where you are now, compared to where before Trump took over, do you feel like the cost of living is higher, the same, or lower
From when Trump,
from 4 or 5 months ago?
uh,
Is our gas prices higher?
actually, I would say slightly lower, just
Okay.
given the gas prices have gone down because
Okay.
obviously, we
Okay.
drive a
What
lot.
about grocery prices? Do you feel like those are any different?
If anything, slightly lower
Okay.
here.
Okay. Now, what about, as far as you understand, you live in a community that's fairly new. People are buying houses. Do you feel like housing prices have changed much? Have you gotten any feel there?
So housing, I would say housing prices, because they're building a ton near me, have gone down, if anything,
Okay.
over the last several months.
Okay.
Maybe like
Okay.
5%,
Okay.
something like that.
And so this has been much in the last 45 days, 30 days or
Yeah.
so, with all of this tariff turmoil, in the state of Washington. All of those metrics I just mentioned have gone up.
Wow.
We have higher gas prices than we did anytime during Biden. We have, I just saw a report, a friend shared this with me. I was in Seattle this week and my son was in Seattle. Gas prices were higher there than what we paid for gas when we were in Hawaii 2 weeks ago for spring
What
break.
are they?
What I saw was it was like $4.79 a gallon
Wow.
for
Yeah.
low end. And
It's
that
like
was in greater Seattle.
297.
Okay. But I paid $4.39 a gallon in Maui. I saw this report. Somebody shared it with me. The price of groceries in the state of Washington are higher on average than they are in Hawaii. So I
Crazy.
share those two things. And then when you look at like all the other cost of living, all those things, I just mentioned to you, all these new taxes that Washington has put into place. They increased the budget spend when we are already a major deficit. This is my belief.
Mm-hmm.
You live in a state, you said, man, I feel like prices are lower. Now, granted, this is all subjective. We don't have the metrics here. We can't compare. I wonder how many people live in states like mine where the local state government has driven up costs and therefore they're feeling worse about this presidency than maybe people that are in a state like yours that have done things to lower costs, to mitigate some of these costs.
Yeah.
To where people feel like, oh, I feel pretty good about this presidency.
And it's not to defend the president, or it's just kind of just trying to see things in terms of where it's 100 days in. There's a lot of negotiations that are still continuing to happen given these tariff talks. You're inheriting a lot of debt that's trying to be tampered down. There's a lot of factors that go in. Has it been the best 100 days? No, it hasn't. There's been a lot of uncertainty.
What would you like if you were to say what you think hasn't gone well? What hasn't gone well?
I would say, I mean, and this is something maybe because I'm in that. Again, I don't really care because it's like the stock market, right? So many, trillions of dollars are in the U.S. stock market, from retirement funds to pension plans to, so much money, right? And that's obviously not had a great start. I would say because of a lot of the tariff talks, and I get the tariff talks. So for me, yeah, there's this short term downside risk, which I look as opportunity, and I think a lot of people might not, where they're like, my pensions, my retirement plans, my 401ks, it's everything's going to the shit. And I'm like, not at all in that mindset. I'm more of like, this is opportunity if you want to get in as in dollar cost average. No, not financial advice, by the way.
Well, I mean, I think
But,
the interesting factor is if we look at where the stock market, where it was a year ago, not almost to the date, but as I'm looking back, April 30th, we closed at 37.9. Today, we're opening up just over 40,000. Yes, we've seen a peak back in mid-December, early December, of about 45,000 on the Dow. I think what's hard here is trying to solely say what traders have done, use as an opportunity to capture profit. Again, we've seen a 12% increase and then fall off. How much of that were people that were opportunistic, that were long, that decided, I'm going to take profits, I'm going to sell here?
Oh yeah, the markets have been up for a while,
Yeah.
and given and the economy. I mean, the other thing too is the economy. Like, how stable are our jobs? I think we were misled a lot over the last past few months, years, on the
Well, I
job
mean,
numbers.
that's one of the things, that job numbers are actually pretty good. Like,
Yeah,
those numbers are coming out. I was watching a podcast. Chamath pineapple
Chamath. Oh yeah, with what's his name? Yeah,
with
I
Andrew
watched it.
Schultz.
Yeah, yeah, Andrew
And
Schultz.
one of the things he talked about is like, as a institutional investor, and he was sharing that, he used to own these Sacramento Kings. He was involved in Facebook. He's got big money, like
Yeah,
multiple
billions.
billions,
Yeah,
and is not involved in the stock market. And the reason why, he goes, because it's been unbelievable, meaning not unbelievable, like, oh my goodness, like you can't hold on to anything. He talked about the jobs numbers. He goes, what people invested, as he shared, is we've just pretty much said, no, it's all BS, because they'll come out 200,000 and then they'll revise it. And then the next month they'll revise back and say, hey, you only added 90,000.
yeah,
And it's just like, the numbers are always just like such a lie that you can't rely on any of it. It's just, it's such a falsity. It's like, that's why I'm choosing not to be involved. I would put money into companies that I want to believe in,
yeah,
and not just be in the stock market. So I think that comes back to, is the stock, and again, I'm focusing on the stock market.
yeah.
Is that all Trump? Granted, yeah, we saw it fall off with the tariffs, everything else. Is that just a good time for people to say, hey, I'm going to cash in, I'm going to put a bunch of money in my pocket, I'm going to make
Yeah.
the first quarter look good, I'm going to reset this thing, and then
Oh
I'll buy low, and if we kind of go
man,
higher, good. I'll just
yeah,
play the market. And I think that's what is hard, looking at one factor over the other, to
yeah,
say, man, he's done a good or a bad job. And I think
totally.
that's the piece that's like, I give him credit for anything, is like, yeah, just get
No, I
stuff
think
done. The stuff that I committed to that were important, we have put into action.
yeah, and that's the thing. If you're out there and you voted for President Trump, are you satisfied with the job done thus far? According to the polling, I would say there's actually more people aren't.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's what the numbers say, is that
Yeah, and
the
this is a Fox
voters of
poll.
Trump
This isn't.
aren't happy with, so far, with what Trump has done. And again, I wonder, is that because you expected different different feelings, or to go different to get the results that he's getting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd love to hear from people in the comments. What did you expect in the first 100 days? And obviously,
Yeah.
like, is it the economy? Is it taxes? Is it tariffs? Is it inflation? You know,
Yeah.
immigration, border security. Border security was actually the highest of his approval ratings. I don't know. Do you have it? Like, what's your take? Like, how do you feel about the first 100 days? Just,
This is 100% my take. I have zero problems with what Trump's doing. I have zero problems with what he's doing, because this is what he ran on, and people said, this is what we need you to do. We
Mhm.
need you to somehow fix the economy, and make it more equitable long term for people to be able to survive, lower cost of food, be able to buy homes, have long term financial sustainability. That
Yeah,
was a big piece, right? The economy. The next was border. We talked about border. The last one that I think is really kind of weighing in is this kind of social dynamic. If you go
yeah,
back to the gender stuff, and I think those are slippery slopes. And that's where I really wonder, if I think that if you were to ask people that weren't happy, and really be able to drill down, and I would wonder, okay, are you not happy with what he did? Or are you not happy about your current circumstance? And does that line up with him or your state?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. For me personally too, I guess not a lot of my friends groups. We don't talk about politics all that much, to be honest with you. A little bit here and there, but we haven't gone. Oh, how's President Trump done over the first 100 days?
Yeah.
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 And so we haven't had that like discussion yet. That debate. It's actually a
Yeah.
good debate, and we're having it here now. For me, I feel that I kind of with you. It's kind of the first 100 days of anything. It's going to be tough. It's like the first 100 days of, football season, as you get into spring training, then through spring training, you go to summer camp and like, you're probably about like 60, 70 days in there and you're grueling, you're sweating, you're getting through every, trying to learn plays. By day 90, you might be, a few weeks away from the season. And it's tough, man. And then you go
the dog
into
days of August, right? It's just kind of like, all right,
it's
we got to
grueling.
keep
grinding it out. And same thing with like Tyler, equating it to being a businessman, entrepreneur, early days are always can be grueling and a lot of uncertainty. You're trying to make decisions, and make progress, and what things that may not seem like progress lead to that
without much clarity at all.
Yeah.
And I think here's what's hard is if you're in that position of decision making and you're, if we're constantly changing because of, what people are saying, I think that's one thing. I'm going to make a total tangent as I would wonder how much of the proposed disdain has to do with this upheaval in our society because of Doge, because of the tariffs, because of the deportations, not because, that isn't what we wanted. But again, coming back to I just thought it would feel different. Like, I'm all about Doge going in and making sure that the auditing and all those accounting, but man, I thought USAID was a really good thing, right? And it's kind of like, it's like this. Do you come into your house? You guys bought that house, right?
Yeah.
And when you bought it, you came in, you did some renovations, and you're like, well, all right, man, we paid a lot for this house, and now we're going to go spend money to tear it apart. That just seems wasteful, as opposed to, we got to do that because it's cheaper to do that than it is to go buy an empty lot, build a brand new house, rent a house while it's getting built, all those other time. Like, it's not, doesn't feel good to work with contractors constantly in and out and just the ups and downs and headaches. But eventually when you get to it, it's like, oh man, I'm so glad we did that.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
feel like that's what America is going through with Doge. And granted, hey, there's days that, you hire a contractor and you say, get the job done. And one day he's there and he's busting his butt and he's doing so much work. And then you don't see him for 3.5, 4 weeks. And you're like, is this job important? That's normal.
Yeah.
Partly because of how they stage things, supply coming in, if like, for example, we just got done doing an outdoor kitchen. It was something we put on the back burner for years. And the difference between the trusses getting put on was a matter of 2 days scheduling. And because they didn't do it 2 days earlier, it went from December 6th to January 6th. And so you're just sitting here and they're kind of waiting all through couldn't do anything. And the project got extended out like an extra 2-3 weeks because of that 2-day thing. And I think that's where, if you've gone through that, you can understand, okay, when Elon comes in and Doge, they lay a bunch of people off. All right, that's an unfortunate way to go back and say, do we really need that many? We really needed those people. Okay, great. You have to hire. And I understand the emotional of that is so difficult. I'm not trying to downplay it, but that's also just, there's not a better way to go through the process, unfortunately, when you're trying to get it done quick.
Let me ask you this question. Now that we live in a society where I feel more and more people are looking for the instantaneous gratification and flip and change. Like, why isn't this changed? It's been 6 minutes or like 6 hours, 6 days, 6 months. Like, do you think that has a factor of like, like it's been 100 days? Why we haven't seen, the changes and all the things you promised. You think that plays into it slightly, a little bit, a lot?
I think there's a few of them that, even to Trump's zealousness, he said, "Oh, I'd have the Ukraine Russia thing done in a day." Okay, it's been 100 days, not done.
Yeah, I think the 72-hour ceasefire today was announced.
Yeah, I mean, so there's progress. Those are things that are happening. It just sometimes, man, oh yeah, from the outside, oh, I know how to handle this. Oh no, there's a lot more I didn't know. And the reaction and say this is, if everyone else in the the government was all in and say, man, yes, we're going to support Trump, this is what we need to do, and all the other both parties were like, yes, please get this done, yes, we're behind you, yes, maybe it would have gotten done a lot sooner. But when he's fighting all the headwind, and all of a sudden each one of those other two parties, say Ukraine and Russia, are looking at that, oh, well, I'm going to leverage off that to get more for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's going on. And so that, I think, extended it out even more, which became difficult. And so when you look at the immigration stuff, like the other day, I don't know enough about it, but just talking about it is, the couple different judges, I think there was one in Wisconsin that were arrested for disruption, for being a accessory to stopping some deportation
I saw that.
proceedings. It's like, is that someone overstepping on one side or the other? Because it's one or the both. And you pretty much look at deportation. If they figure out you're here illegally, they can take you and deport you. That's the policy.
Yeah.
There's no due process. There isn't. You were here illegally, you are that person, then you're on the next bus out.
Yeah.
That's what it's been. Like, that's what Obama talked about. Plenty of videos where it's like, yeah, that's the process.
Yeah.
I don't make it.
Yeah. I'm curious to see these numbers come fall, September, October, November time, given more time, how
I think it really, I think it's going to take longer. I think it's going to take a year.
A year from now, next spring.
Yeah. Because I think we need to go through this cycle of, okay, like, that's a full year, in the calendar cycle for businesses. That's a full year in regards to like growing cycle and crops. That's a full year in school cycle. That's a full year. I think for us to really say, okay, did we go the right direction on some of these cuts? And I give credit to a lot of the administration are like, some of this may go perfect.
Right.
There may be pieces that don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what was the first week. That's what they were saying.
Yeah. Especially with Doge.
It's hard to condemn someone that is so upfront and say, this may not go perfect. But we got to do something.
It is funny how, I mean, I don't know if you have, but I have not seen much about Doge recently. That was, I feel, so out of the news cycle. Everything now is all about China and the U.S. and the tariff wars. I mean, that's
when it comes to those. I think what's taken over is the illegals and deportation. I mean, that is front and center, one. Especially when different representatives are flying to different countries and trying to be the knight in shining armor, and you're like, like people are saying, is like, why weren't you caring about the domestic people that were facing problems, the fires in California, the destruction in the North Carolinas? Like, why did you choose this as the lever to pull?
Yeah, like actual like Americans, whether that guy's an MS-13 member or not, he was an illegal citizen in the United States, right?
As far as everything I know, yeah,
homegrown Americans
who
had
gone through several,
in the Carolinas and California,
had several judicial things happen, and there was never a order to deport him in the last presidency for whatever.
And then you go fly out over there. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of it seems very coerced and planned and premeditated. When people
fly to El Salvador,
this is what we're
going to do to flex our
probably muscle. On a private jet that they spent 50, 60, 70,000 on, I mean, like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, and then the photo op there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It seems
this is where I come back and I wonder. It's like, all right, is there such a underswell of undermining that is
totally,
continuing to go on? And this comes back.
totally.
I had a friend the other day. He goes, "We need to stop talking about woke." Okay. And, he and I had gotten a discussion because we were talking about the Charlie Kirk and Bill Maher interview, which
Yeah,
we talked about last week.
good
And just
interview.
like the words from Bill Maher and the fact that those two sat down and had a conversation. And it's kind of like, why can't we see more of that? Why can't we see,
Totally.
these people sit down and have conversations, and we're not seeing it. And yet Bill Maher is getting eviscerated for having it. But going back to one of the things that Bill Maher shared is that wokeism is killing the liberal movement. Okay. So my friend and I were talking about this, and he goes, "Tyler, we need to stop that. Stop with the whole woke." I'm like, okay. And he goes, "We need to call it what it is. It's divisive and destructive." And so let's just go there. And one of the things I shared with you over the weekend that I mentioned is in Washington, the governor signed an order that they are giving $120,000 to first-time Black homeowners. Let me just say that again. 120,000 to first-time Black homeowners. It was signed into policy in Washington state. Now, for it to get ratified, I don't know if it does need to go more. And it's just kind of like, how can that happen? And not that I have
Washington.
any problem with giving first-time homeowners monies towards buying a home. Okay, fine, do that. We've done that in the past. But to signify that amount of money, that's a lot. Because in some places, that's more than the cost of a home.
Yeah.
And it's only going to inflate home prices. Number two is, how do you qualify? And so
How do you? Yeah. How do you?
and that's what I wonder. It's like my daughter. She's 0.5% based upon genetic testing African. Does she qualify? Does someone who is, 75% African descent but is very light skinned, do they qualify? Like, how do you judge this? Please help me understand when they were sitting down and arguing this. And one of the things in Washington that's continued to happen is we're, I think, about 75% the Democrat Party that is in representation. And it's just kind of like, it's almost like, no, it was people, yeah, this is good, this is good. And again, from what I've understood, but I look at these things and just wondering how destructive and divisive it is. This is not bringing people together. This is not saying, how can we help the citizens of our state? And that's where I wonder, that's very unique here, not dealing with that there. But when you see these undertones everywhere, whether it's in Maryland with the representatives there, if it's happening in California with Gavin and some of the other Democratic constituents, we've seen AOC and Bernie Sanders kind of parade around the country, just causing dissension. Is that what we need?
Well, and then also, with Elon and the Teslas and the vandalism, right? It's like, what are people doing?
Well, what's funny to me about that is if we look at the individuals of the last 10, 12 years who have paraded Teslas as the transportation solution in our country.
Right.
Very stereotypical. Please forgive me for what it is, but it is people that I would say tend to be more liberal, tend to be more save the environment through electrical, get rid of fossil fuels, whatever it may have you, right?
Right.
And there's people, I get it. There's people that have taken the tax advantage. There's people that have put in solar. My neighbor's 100% generation. Like, I get it. If I could, get the rebate based upon, and we had enough production. Yeah. I thought about buying an electric truck like 3-4 years ago. I certainly did. And so to see the venom and attack, like I know someone that was talking about some of the features they loved about their Tesla, but it's like, I'm not down with Elon. And I'm like,
it's so
like
silly.
3 years ago, you loved the guy for his vision. And so I come back to, how have we gotten there? It's because of the divisiveness that's been sowed in, as opposed to, hey, you love this guy 3 years ago for what he was doing to be so revolutionary.
Right.
And he goes and he does that within Doge. And then all of a sudden you want to firebomb his corporate assets.
Or it's not even his core. Like, it's people's personal property, right? They bought the car,
At that
they
point,
have
yes.
kids, whatever, and then someone thinks they have the right to then
Destroy it
destroy someone's property, like because what
as a
you don't
political
like it.
statement.
Yeah,
Because that's what
it's
it was. It was a political statement. It wasn't
totally
a, in those cases, usually it wasn't a, I'm mad with you. Like, hey, I drive a Tesla. I come in and I park 4 inches away from your car. You can't get into your car. All right, we've seen that in the past. People are going to get keyed, right? That's how that has happened in the
right,
past,
right,
traditionally,
totally,
right? Bang my door into your
right,
car,
but right,
damage my car at the expense of damaging your car because I'm pissed
right.
off at you, right? But that wasn't it. It was, I don't like Elon. You drive a car that I believe represents Elon, the Tesla. Shh, let me just go attack you. Like, how do we get there?
And it goes back to this divisiveness, and for those who haven't watched, you should watch the Bill Maher Charlie Kirk interview. It's just two people on the opposite ends of the spectrum who can have a debate and a conversation around politics, about religion, and leave shaking hands, and maybe even have developing a friendship through it, and that's it. We can disagree and get along, and not be like, and that has been the problem, I think, permeating throughout society a lot, through a lot of the wokeism, other things.
Do you remember years ago? This was like back. I remember it kind of like probably during the Bill Clinton era, and I know you're several years younger, so I was pretty young for you, but James Carville. Do you know James Carville?
Yeah.
The political pundit, the bald guy from
yes, I remember him very well.
From Louisiana. And he used to be on either Meet the Press or one of those like political pundit shows with his wife. Her name was Mary Madeline. And they like completely, totally different ends of the spectrum. Like Carville worked in the Clinton camp and Mary Madeline was in the Reagan Bush. Like they were both sides, right?
Right.
And they were married. And they would come and they would have these conversations, and that you would know they would walk out hand in hand because they were married.
Yeah.
And it's just like the concept of even having the point of that conversation in one of our spheres today. I mean, just imagine Charlie Kirk sitting down with AOC and they're having a conversation and they leave with arm in arm around each other, and we're like, I appreciate you because you stand for American people. They would like, I could imagine there would be a visceral like vomiting, even if they were in the same room from one person. That's what I expect.
That's what we need. I mean, that's what we need more of, though. Like,
so we need to find a way to get Charlie Kirk and AOC to sit down.
Just more people from opposite ends of the spectrum to sit down and find commonality with one another. Just overall, like, I think there's this media, disillusion that they try to put on people to conform into one area or the other and pin people against one another. Where if you can just sit with these people that may think differently and find commonality, like you growing up on a farm, like we had that gentleman on we discussed before, right? Two opposite ends of the spectrum. You sit down, you talk for an hour, and you're like, oh shit, this girl, this guy, they're very similar. They've been through different traumatic events.
Yeah.
They want the same things in life, which is peace, happiness, health, prosperity,
friendships,
and
relationships, community.
right. And it's like, I think that is majority of people, but then you get fed all of this, like, not necessarily hate speech, but there's a lot of negative.
I think it is. It's venom towards the opposition.
Right. And brainwashing
venom towards the opposition rather than appreciation
on both sides
of the opposition. It's kind of like,
totally.
You can't have yin without yang.
Totally.
Right. And, getting all the way back to where we started today is kind of, where has Trump gone? It's been shocking that we've seen the reaction to Elon in the destruction of Teslas in my estimate. It's been shocking to me. If there's anything else that's happened in the last 100 days, no, I mean, I kind of, and as I've shared at you at times, like, I don't see a different way to do it. Like, you going back to Chamath, or it's so funny, the people that spend all day long going back and pulling from the archives, the different representatives of our society in Congress over the last 30 years that have pretty much given the blueprint for what Trump has done with the
Right.
tariffs. Like, this is the solution coming from both sides of the aisle and all representation. And then for, again, very mum is quiet. And what's interesting is they aren't actively attacking it,
Yeah.
but they're not silencing the attack.
Well, and whether what the Trump administration's doing to help with the deficit, right, with creating Doge and these other things, at least they're trying something and doing something. No administration previously has even attempted to, or at least publicly from what we've seen.
They've spoken about it. They haven't
never done anything.
Gone to the extent of let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it, and which they're doing, and obviously only time will tell if they're successful or not. But like, at least they're trying. They're attempting at this, to figure this all out. But it's going to be an interesting next few years to see how if this golden age of America does come to existence, or it's maybe a tough road ahead. I don't know.
As we get too close to wrapping up, just your thoughts, Alex, is over the next, let's say, 45 days. So we get to day roughly 150, so 50 days. What do you think could change in regards to immigration, Doge, the tariffs, and economy to see these numbers continue to dwindle or rebound?
So I think if they continue to dwindle, you'll see a continued. I mean, this is my personal take.
Yeah.
Because I believe it weighs heavy on a lot of people, is a continued stock market to either continue to go down or just be flatlined and not really do a whole lot. That's one part of it. You'll continue to see basically not maybe stagflation. So prices to stay the same, everything still be expensive. And you kind of have this stagnant, high-priced society that will continue to will not help these numbers improved. And I think the opposite, if you can see the tariff battles with China being settled, if you can see a war in Ukraine end, if you can see those things happen, I think, and then calm inflation down and a rally in the markets, the stock markets, I think then that is when you can see the approval ratings increase.
Here's my question on that. And the things that you've said, I get, and I think a lot of people are saying it. How do you reduce prices and making it more affordable for people and the stock market going up? How does that happen?
A lot of quantitative easing. So the Fed to cut interest rates.
Okay.
Is one
so
thing.
If interest rates were to go down, that could essentially make the cost of doing business lower, which could bring to lower prices, but that could increase the speculative gain on the stock market. Okay. So the only way that we could, based upon if we could see the stock market go up and the prices fall, mean that interest rates have to go down. Okay. Yeah. Got that. My take on that, otherwise, the other way for prices to go down is the stock market has to get softer. And if the stock market gets softer, but the dollar stays high, then that's a good thing. So essentially, you've done the same thing. So if the dollar increases in value by 10% and the stock market goes down by 10%, the net actual value is the same.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so if that were to happen, man, that would be the healthiest thing I could believe. And I wonder, part of it, as you shared, it's like, I get that, right? I'm not disputing, but I think that's where over the next 50 days, I really wonder if we can see the approval rating increasing, even though we don't see the stock market bounce up. I don't believe this. I don't want the stock market to go up, because I believe that's what's driven a lot of the, I was just talking to someone here recently and we were discussing this. I talked to yesterday at lunch. So I'm over in
Okay.
Seattle, talked to a buddy of mine I went to college with who lives over there, and he's worked in insurance the last, since we left college, so 20 couple years.
Wow.
And he was talking about how he expects that industry to shrink by 50% in the next 10 years.
Holy shit.
And this is residential. This is like personal insurance and not corporate insurance. And like for one of the major companies, like if you think of, like State Farm, Allstate, what he had worked for one of those major companies. And he was talking about this over, his tenure. He said a couple years ago, what they did is for insurance, they would front load for insurance companies all of their income up front, but they would reduce their residual income. So if you signed a new policy, say you signed a new, auto policy, and it's going to cost you $1,500 a year. And I don't know if it's auto, but I'm just using the example. The agent would get all of that $1,500 like in the front end, but get very little if you extend it out. Okay. And you said what that drove is a lot of front end money, but people didn't, they drove for the front end money. But if you were in the industry for a long time, there wasn't a lot to drive a loyalty.
Yeah.
He goes, what ended up happening then is they reduced the front end money and then continue to drive profits, reduce payout, increase, the premiums. And where was all the money going? To the shareholders.
I was going to say
it wasn't getting paid to the insured because they were getting denied. It wasn't getting paid to the agents. It was all going to the shareholders. And, as we were talking about, he goes, this is what's going to be the undoing of the insurance market. And when you look at the stock market, and that's one of the darling sectors, healthcare insurance is in order for us to get lower cost of living, there needs a grenade thrown in that whole thing.
Yeah, well, that's a good. Let's go into that just for a minute. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, we saw this drawdown over the last several months, 2-3 months in the market because of the trade wars. Right, a lot of volatility, but I wouldn't call that a massive the collapse of like the health insurance industry or the insurance industry, which would probably cause like a 20% drop in the market, which would be crushing. That would nuke the stock market and force, in my opinion, quantitative easing from the Fed.
It would force a reduction in the interest rate just to, support the economy.
Yeah.
It would also probably have a major impact on the dollar.
Totally.
So again, I don't think that's healthy, but if you look at coming back to it, is the stock market staying where it's at now healthy? I personally believe it is.
Yeah.
I don't think the stock market going higher is good. And this was another thing, our buddy Chamath, I call him our Chamath. I call him our buddy because we've talked enough about him. He's buddy. He reiterated this comment that I've heard. He goes, I think he even used a little bit different numbers, but still, it's like 50% of the stock market is controlled by the top 10%. I think he used the number 7% actually, right? And it's like everyday people that are making less than, a couple hundred, $200,000, right? That's middle income right now, $200,000.
Crazy.
Unless they're not worried about the stock market. There are speculators, day traders, absolutely. But those people, they love volatility. How do you make money in the stock market if you're a day trader? Volatility. When it's just stays the same all the time, it's hard. And then you look at, I would say, the most outspoken group when it comes to what's happening in the stock market is a collection of two distinct people. But it's a group of people that are most upset. It is baby boomers that are wanting to cash out.
Yes. Yep. The 60,
and
65
it
plus.
is the people that are in that industry that all of their bonuses and profits are driven off of revenue that got greedy. And I think it's a younger generation or it's the older generation. It's not our age people. Like when I talk to my friends that are financial advisors, like, yeah, this is what the market does. And it's the young people that have never seen it. Like, oh, I went from making, 3 million, 4 million. And now all of a sudden I got to pay in. Like, oh,
all of a sudden my trade. Yeah. It's, you're right.
I'm not driving my Lamborghini anymore. I got to get a Corolla. Like,
Yeah.
oh, so bad.
It's
Like,
true.
this is what
Yeah.
happens.
But yeah, I mean, that. Maybe you say that for next week is the baby boomer generation, which is my parents,
My
60,
parents, yeah.
yep, 60 and over, are in retirement or just about ready to get into retirement, and they have the pensions, the 401ks, a lot of money in the markets, which they made a ton over, and I think that's where the greed
They
may
made a
set in.
ton in the last
Ton.
year.
Think about over the last 25 years,
Oh, yeah. I
30
mean,
years.
huge money.
You know,
Well, I mean,
somewhere
a lot of them took an absolute beating in '08, but Stint have rebounded. If you kept dollar for dollar since, even when you went in '07, you're up 4 or 5 fold. Like,
totally,
you're okay. And I think
You're
that's
right.
where it's kind of like, but I also look at this. My parents who are retired and get Social Security and or live off of their investments, their cost of living has gone up in the last 5 years, especially in this state.
Totally.
Probably 25 to 30%. So their cost of living has maybe just stayed with the stock market. That's problematic.
Yeah.
So,
and it probably all ties back to disapproval ratings, right? You got a generation.
That's where I really wonder if you did a heat map across the country where they pulled this in the different states. I bet it would be dramatically different. Just my speculation and guess. But thanks for being here. Thanks for watching Newswire. Appreciate it. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to get notified. If you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook, man, would love your comments. Have this conversation with us. What are your feelings? What's your approval rating? There's no political bias here. I don't care about that. I want to hear from you because I want to be able to help you go through, impact people, and lead better, as I'm trying to do, as Alex and I are both here to do every time. So thanks for being here. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.